Moesha, Kenan and Kel, The Parkers, One on One, True Jackson VP. I mean, all these shows have exactly two things in common. A, they came out in the mid to late 90s and early 2000s and were geared towards teen audiences. And B, they all featured a black main character and sometimes even a black main cast.
When Nickelodeon brings Kenan and Kel together on the new show, Kenan and Kel.
Ooh. New Moesha starring Brandy, and look who's making a special guest appearance.
You are not Deion Sanders, are you?
Check the ranks, baby. Check these ranks.
Is about to get the biggest break of her life.
Young lady,
What are you doing?
I want you to be my VP of Youth Apparel.
I'll have to ask my mom, but that sounds great.
I mean, these shows were funny, they were insightful, and they managed to really have and deal with some very important themes while still being whimsical and still being authentic to a lot of black culture and black identity. And they were a little bit ahead of their time when we look back.
There's gotta be some reason why you didn't get that job. The truth is, I don't hire black people. Well, did you have a vision, right?
Yeah. And I saw Chloe straight up say I do not hire black people. What?
But when we look at the TV landscape right now, it seems as though a lot of these shows that were geared towards young black audiences are scarce or don't even exist at all. This is a larger conversation that folks have been engaging in for a while. Like every few months I'm seeing on Twitter or TikTok this kind of reminiscing of, we used to have such good black young adult shows, sitcoms, in the 90s and 2000s, and what happened. There's always that question. I want in this conversation not to just again harp on and kind of reminisce and complain, but I truly want to dive into some of the history as to even some of the ways these shows were created, but also from that history maybe trickle down and look at how we have seen a backtrack in a way. And I have some theories. I love a good theory. So these are some self-made theories based on research, common knowledge about the industry at the moment, and my own thoughts, of course. But I just wanted to have my 2 cents and yap about this topic because it's one that very much interests me. For some context, if you, like me, have been seeing, especially around this season, a lot of complaints about, hey, where are the black shows? Where are the black girls? There's not a lot of black girls. Like, what's happening, right? Specifically towards teen audiences. Let me set the stage for you to give you an insight into why this conversation is coming again right now. So recently there've been the upfronts events that have happened, and for people who don't know what the upfront season is, the upfronts is essentially this time starting from like April, May, June, where a lot of networks or studios, so think Netflix, think Prime Video, think Paramount, they essentially release their slate of fall schedule, so fall shows that are coming. And this is a big event. There's big events, big meetings that happen that are geared towards advertisers to essentially sell to advertisers kind of a very, I guess, epic view at what's coming next on like Netflix. So advertisers get very excited and buy into these shows, right? So big shows are announced, shows that they think would make a splash. And during this season, a lot of Prime Video's shows have been released. A lot of them have been greenlit and kind of stated that have been in development. So there are a lot of trade news that's come out about some shows that are in development. People have noticed, I've taken quite a notice, that Prime is diving deep into their young adult bag. And I think that's a good thing, by the way. I think we need more young adult shows, and I'll dive into this a little bit more later. But Prime is doing this kind of young adult renaissance, and they're doing it more than all the other players. So I think that's a good thing, but there lacks a lot of diversity in the way that they're doing it, right? There's a lot of book to TV adaptations that are coming, and it just, there's no black people. And again, I'm going to speak from the black perspective of things. I'm sure other minorities also aren't seeing themselves. I'm just speaking from the black perspective in this video. but there's not a lot of black, there's none. And the thing that irks people the most is that there's one young adult black show that has been in development for maybe a year, it seems, and no news, no casting has been released, while other shows that were announced later kind of seemed like they were sped up, right? They were maybe optioned, so the book maybe was chosen. So option means that the book has been bought, so the rights to the book have been bought by Prime Video, for example, from the author. So they've been optioned, and then casting was quickly announced. I mean, the showrunner was announced, and then casting, and then now it's coming, it seems like. So there's some shows that this is happening for, and it feels like the black shows are not getting the same treatment. So with this has come a lot of talk about contrasting the state of black TV 20, 30 years ago versus the state of black TV, specifically again when it pertains to young adult shows, comparing then versus now. That somehow it feels like at a time when we would think, I mean, things were more racist back then, things were more overtly racist. Now we've kind of progressed and we've moved on, but it feels like we're regressing in terms of some of the ways that we see young black television, young black actors even casted in these shows. So again, I want to look just a little bit into history and look into maybe one of the biggest, or dare I say the biggest creator, the biggest machine of black young adult television in the 90s and the early 2000s, the one and only UPN.
The Parkers. Then, easygoing Joan is about to learn a new word.
No. Okay, you're gonna make a bad woman.
Girlfriends. It all starts Monday at 8.
And at UPN, we never make a promise we can't keep. Moesha.
Tuesday at 8 on UPN 20.
For the kids who are joining us, and by the way, it really was before my time, so I'm part of y'all. The Gen Zers who are joining, UPN, you might not know, but UPN was the thing back in the day, right? I also didn't grow up with this, so I had to learn about it years later, which saddened me so much, because just looking at the slate of black shows that they had, I mean, Moesha, One on One, Girlfriends was on there, Malcolm and Eddie, just a lot of black sitcoms that are iconic now when we think back and when we look at them, when we watch them, iconic. So UPN launched in 1995 and it was owned by the CBS Corporation. And initially, they weren't created to cater to black audiences as what ended up happening, but their initial target audience was actually young white men, with some of their first programming being the WWE and Star Trek Voyagers. But what happened was that they started noticing that with the few shows that they had that were black, they started noticing that black audiences were really flocking, to watch these shows. And they realized that they had to now cater to that audience, because that was the audience that was essentially funding their network. One of the executives at the time even said, you can develop all you want for a particular group, but if they're not going to show up for you, you have to really chase the demo that is showing up for you. And in this case, that demo was black audiences. But sadly, all good things come to an end. And after about 10 years on the air, UPN shut down as it merged with the WB to create what we now know as the CW. And there's various reasons why this merger happened, and one of those reasons being advertiser greed or racism, which I'll dive into a little later. But just keep in mind, advertisers. At the center of it, essentially what ended up happening is forming the CW, programming geared towards black audiences, those young black audiences, seemed to kind of fizzle out, right? So the WB, which was another channel at the time, similar to UPN, was owned by Warner Brothers, and essentially the WB really also geared towards those young teen audiences. But unlike UPN, there wasn't really an emphasis on black audiences. Instead, it was geared towards more young, kind of white female audiences. And forming the CW, there was a noticeable shift. So the UPN staple, I think it was a staple day that UPN had even for black audiences, wasn't, they didn't keep that up. And one of the executives who became the president of UPN at the time also stated that I thought it was a huge missed opportunity and a big shame for the WB to just let that programming block fade away, because we've learned over and over again that the African American audience can be a tremendously loyal audience. It just seemed like this audience helped us build that channel. Now we're just going to step away from them. So this was in response to essentially the merger with the WB. And by the way, I say UPN and we're looking at UPN as kind of a case study, I guess, in a way. But UPN wasn't really the only one to dive into young teen audience, young black audiences. We even saw Nickelodeon's, right? Nickelodeon had a bunch of young black sitcoms. Like they had Just Jordan, they had Kenan and Kel, which by the way, if you've never watched Kenan and Kel, I watched it for the first time like 2 years ago. And when I tell you that show is good, it's so funny. It's probably maybe one of my favorite sitcoms. It's actually absolutely hilarious. We had Romeo. I think these were some of the shows before my time. Romeo. I know they had True Jackson VP again. So they had a slate of shows as well. Okay, now that I've laid out some of the history, the question remains, so what happened exactly? Like, how did we find ourselves here? How did we find ourselves in a landscape where we can name like maybe 2-3 young adult black shows that have come out in the past 10 years, really? And how we found ourselves in a space where we're still wondering how to make up for the fact that 20 years ago, when it was more racist, one would say, when things were not as diverse, they had more shows, they had more black geared teen shows, but now we're not seeing that same equity. Well, I have a few theories. I told you I like a theory, so I have a few theories. I have 4 theories. So including my theories is advertiser greed, the myth of post-racialism, white executive, and finally the streaming world. So remember when I mentioned briefly in the history of UPN how there were some kind of talks, essentially there were some rumors amongst executives that the reason why UPN had to kind of essentially go out of business was partly because of advertiser greed. So by the way, UPN was a rating success. UPN was doing amazing in ratings. They were really recording high ratings for shows like Moesha, One on One, The Parkers. These shows were consistently having audiences that were entertained, audiences that were coming back, audiences that were loyal. So ratings were good. And for the kids that don't know, for the young Gen Zers, because I think if you're mid Gen Zer or like older Gen Zer, you should know that how the cable world works. For the younger Gen Zers, the cable world was really funded and the broadcast world was really funded by advertisers, right? Because in today's world, streaming, we essentially are paying for, if you're paying for Netflix, especially if it's premium, you essentially are paying for your ability to watch Netflix. You're paying because you're paying through your subscription. $20, I don't know how many dollars it is a month right now. However many dollars it is a month, that's what you're paying for your watch. Back in the day, things were a little different. Cable, yes, you had to pay for cable, but that money didn't necessarily go to the networks. That was the money that went to cable providers, right? And advertisers were essentially banking on the fact that little Billy would watch Nickelodeon, and on Nickelodeon, he would see the advertiser, let's say that was Hot Wheels. Little Billy would see Hot Wheels, and seeing is impressions. So by seeing Hot Wheels, little Billy would more than likely now become a customer for Hot Wheels. So advertisers would pay a Nickelodeon for that impression, for the eyes of Billy. No, I'm joking. They would pay Nickelodeon for that impression. Impression is essentially a view, like how many people have viewed this, that's an impression. So advertisers will negotiate, hey, if I pay you $500, again, it was more, but if I pay you $500, little Billy, you promise that little Billy and 10 other little Billies are going to watch. So there would be essentially negotiations and there would be agreements on what the guarantee would be for those impressions. So think about UPN. UPN was doing amazing. UPN ratings were high, meaning a lot of people were watching, so they had a lot of impressions. But somehow advertisers were not as interested to advertise on UPN. And this is according to a Hollywood Reporter article that looked into UPN. One of the executives at the time, Rose Catherine Pigmy, believed that the decision to merge UPN came out of ad revenue. So while these shows were largely popular amongst audiences, advertisers were evidently less inclined to pay top dollars to support shows targeting Black viewers. And Moesha's co-creator even said, and he recalls an ad person saying, and I quote, "We're not interested in downscale." So essentially, advertisers were not as keen, they were not as enthusiastic to bring their amazing product. We're not interested in advertising with Black audiences because, again, there was probably this idea and this thought that those impressions that they would gain with those Black audiences would not translate into money spent, which, by the way, is a big lie, because Nielsen research has shown, Nielsen reports have shown, countless research has shown, and I'll link a lot of those down below, that Black viewers, Black subscribers are some of the most loyal audiences. But especially a Nielsen report shows that when they see themselves represented, they are more likely to even pay attention to an ad, to even want to buy in to an ad. So it's an interesting, I think, conversation, because he also brings about the question where some of those advertisers even caring much about seeing that representation, even in the way they created some of those advertisements. We don't know. I guess that's a question for another day. The Black dollar was devalued in such a way that it might have even contributed or even led to the merger that happened, the basically killing of UPN. And why do I bring this up as one of my main theories, right? Because I think the question is, well, we have moved past cable, we've moved past, although that's not completely true, we've moved past cable, we've moved past broadcast, we're in a streaming world now, advertisers don't matter as much, which is not even fully true, especially in the market that we live in. You see Netflix, the original no advertisers, the original essentially streaming service, is even now starting an advertising business. So things are changing. But apart from that, let's just suppose that we were just in a streaming world where advertising didn't exist. Why does it matter that advertisers were not as keen to advertise to Black audiences and kind of devalue Black audience? I think it matters because it creates a precedent, or at least kind of an idea, right? It creates this weird imaginary in which Black audiences are viewed and kind of treated as second-class citizens. It creates this idea that, well, creating Black shows is not so good for the business. It's not good for profit. And you know the thing about ideas spread. Whether it is true or not, ideas spread. So I believe that even in the late 2010s and in the 2020s, we haven't seen a lot of Black shows, in part because of this idea that Black shows are not really good for business. I think this idea trickled down and started with not necessarily this incident at UPN, but advertisers devaluing the impressions, so devaluing the view of Black audiences because they don't view Black audiences as having the means, as perhaps having the access even to purchase some of their products, which again is very untrue. Research shows that Black audiences are very loyal customers. They do have purchasing power, especially when advertisers care about how they present this messaging to Black audiences. Truly have, honestly, a loyal, very engaged audiences on their hands. It's just about advertisers truly finding the right way to advertise to Black folks. I think that idea trickled down, and I think it created this reality that we now live in, that, well, you know, Black shows, well, they're not great for, and this is not things that people are saying out loud, but I think it's an idea that became a thought that now has become our reality in which we live in right now. To be fair, UPN's closure was not just this advertiser or ad revenue issue. Okay, my second theory is this myth of post-racialism. So post-racialism is an idea that really was popularized in 2008 when Barack Obama won the presidency of the United States, becoming the first Black president. So the idea here was, wow, there's a Black president. Wow, one of the richest women in the world is Oprah Winfrey, a Black woman. Wow, there's so many Black successful people, it seems. Have we like moved away from racism? Have we solved racism? That was the idea of post-racialism. While this theory has been debunked, and while I believe that in popular culture right now, the average, okay, maybe not the average, let's not say that. But I do believe that even, because again, this was a progressive ideal. Like in this case, this was the very, very radical left that was saying things like this. It was essentially a good thing, right? The idea of post-racialism was a good thing. At least it was positioned as a good thing. Like, we've escaped beyond race. Like, we've done it, guys. Come on. Let's celebrate. No, I'm joking. No, but like, I think that like, if you were to ask a progressive person these days, how would they feel about post-racialism? They would definitely denounce it. Like, no, racism exists. We know it exists. But I want to say that, again, ideas, while they might be maybe debunked or people might not say they believe in them, ideas do impact. And I think that this idea of post-racialism, while most people would say, I don't think that's true, I think it has trickled down and impacted media as we see it today. And I think this idea has especially been trickled down in media, TV media in particular, in the ways that we see kind of an ignoring of race. I think our TV landscape right now is one in which there is a main white character. There is the Black friend or other ethnicity friend, or there is and this is something people have talked about a lot, the kind of disposable Black girlfriend. Maybe there is a love interest that's Black or another race, but we don't really see so much of their life, but like they're there, they're there, right? We see the Black people. And I think that this big movement away from Black casts that we see, for example, Moesha, Black cast, and I think this is the case because post-racialism at its core is essentially saying that if racism has been truly erased, then that means that race is not a main factor, or it's not an important factor when it comes to even the way you look at people, right? Because racism has been solved. So, okay, we're all good now. Like, we're all friends. We can all hold hands and kumbaya and sing and be happy. So that's what post-racialism is saying. It's saying, well, racism is not a main factor anymore. Okay, why do we even need the all Black cast? Like, that seems to kind of present in a way that race is a thing. I think post-racialism and color blindness really do go hand in hand, because to say that we live in a post-racial society in a way is to say that, why is race even important anymore? Like, you know, race is not that much important anymore. Come on, we've solved it, right? Because race is related to racism. We've solved those issues. We don't even have to divide ourselves anymore. Like, we're good, we're fine, great. Everyone is happy, right? So I think, to me, it seems that we're seeing those ideas of post-racialism really evolve and take center stage in some of the ways that we've seen TV, especially diversity on TV, be explored in the modern day. So again, this becomes shows in which we have maybe one Black character, we have diversity, but the Black character exists in kind of this weird, I don't want to be like weird white world, because there are Black characters who exist. There are Black people in real life who exist amongst a lot of white people, but oftentimes these Black characters are kind of embedded in this white world, and it doesn't seem to be, at least again, a topic of discussion of like, what are some of those difficulties, what are some of those challenges. And again, they're the only person isolated in this world, so we don't see that extended cast. We don't even see some of the cultural, I guess, effects of what their culture, what that means to them. We don't see a lot of that those cultural effects, those cultural identities that we might have seen in a That's So Raven, in which we had in a 2 Black parent household, where even the way Raven would say certain things, and even the way she would emphasize some things, even the way Raven's mom would call out to Raven, gave, okay, this is a shared experience amongst Black people. I think that post-racialism, which again is kind of a well-intended idea, really impacted and has impacted and continues to impact how Black people are shown on TV. And in these days, we see Black people isolated in a white world, having ascended and having beaten racism. And racism is not an issue, is they're integrated into these white worlds. Usually white main character, Black maybe friend or side character. We know nothing of their story, but yay, there's a Black person with ascended racism, let's go. And I think we see that until something tragic happens, until a Black person is murdered on the streets and there's calls for racism, and people suddenly are kind of woken up again to, oh, no, racism is very much real and very much alive in these big displays. And then we start to see some change. And for folks who are also big readers, we saw this happen on a big scale in the publishing industry, because 2020, 2021, 22, a lot of Black authors were able to sell their books, which again, is a great thing, but it really was on the back of the 2020, the killing of George Floyd, the riots that happened, and just the overall kind of radicalness that came out of 2020, and the calls for justice that came out in 2020. But that, again, when we look at that now, it's very much stopped from the 2020 to the 2022 era, that a lot of Black books were being purchased. A lot of publishing companies were publishing Black books kind of very, very quickly. That's very much changed from that era, because again, we've entered this, racism, we're good, right? We're good. Yeah, we're good. So this is what I'm saying. I'm saying that a lot of the Black shows that we saw in that era, I think, really came out of a space of an awareness of racism that was different from the awareness that we have now. And I think that the awareness of racism right now is very much cyclical. It comes every 10 years, every few years, and then wakes people up. And then it goes back to sleep. And then we see Black people, sometimes maybe even if that, in white shows, but they're also sleeping. They're just there. And I'm not saying they should go around that show saying, hey, I'm Black, hey, racism. No, I'm just saying that when we see them, oftentimes they're just the best friend, the sidekick. They're just the helper, essentially. They are just the vehicle by which the main character gets to experience their story. And I think my next theory really goes hand in hand with what I've just mentioned, kind of this lack of awareness of race, because it's white executives. So white executives, so the people who are kind of manning and deciding what gets made and what doesn't get made, the people who here are at these pitch meetings when folks are pitching to them for new shows, these are the executives, and most of them are white. I've been in some of these rooms and I've been in some of these meetings. Most of them are white. And that's a fact that we all agree with, we all know. But I think what's very interesting for me is that being in this space, being in the industry, right, especially on the more business side of the industry, I've come to understand just how much race is not something that white people think about, which I know, like, okay, like, I think, all right, I mean, yeah, it makes a little sense. But I think when you think about, as a Black person, and I'm not just talking about racism, but I'm talking about awareness of race, right? I'm not just talking about, oh yeah, as a Black person, I experience racism every day. That might be the case for some people, but I'm being honest, that isn't necessarily the case for me. But I think when it comes to awareness of who I am and my racial awareness in comparison, especially when I am always interacting with my white counterparts, it is something that I am constantly aware of. It is something that I am constantly like making sure that I am presenting myself in this particular way, that I'm not saying some things, that I'm not coming across a certain way because I am aware of my blackness. But you would be surprised just how much that isn't the case for white people. And some of you might not be surprised. You're like, yeah, I mean, but I just thought about that recently, and I thought about the differences, right? Why the oppressed and the person who is impacted by racial difference would, of course, think more about race, while the other person, not as much. But I think that there is kind of, maybe unknowingly, a thought by people like minority groups that, well, you know, white people, come on, they should be thinking, like, you know, there's kind of this idea that they are thinking more about race, especially even in those acts of racism. For the white people who are doing or saying something racist or microaggressive, that means that they are always thinking about race. But you would be surprised that that's not necessarily the case. Many of those instances come exactly from a lack of awareness, I would say, a lack of just understanding, I think, right? For the people who they lack that awareness and they lack that kind of knowledge, they kind of operate in a way of whatever comes out of me goes, right? And oftentimes, you know, what comes from the soul is not the best thing, right? It's very much something that's evil, right? Racism is evil. It's something that's evil. So this is all to say that when we think about the people who are at the top of these companies, they are white. And some of these people might be well-meaning, right? Some of these people might be very much well-meaning. They might be very much looking to increase diversity. But the truth is their awareness of racism becomes more aware. Their awareness of race becomes more of a thing when racism happens, when big displays of racism happens. That's just the truth. In being well-meaning, oftentimes many of them maybe enter a post-racial idea, right? And seeing a black character within a white show is enough, right? They don't really have the racial awareness, right, enough to say that, oh, maybe we should have, you know, just an entire black, like that doesn't seem like something that, it just doesn't come to many of them. And this is not me defending white executives. There are, you know, a plethora of white executives who are very much understanding of how important it is to see black characters own their stories. But for those many who don't, right, I think there is this notion that some of these networks are just racist. Some of these networks are just, you know, discriminating against black people. They don't want to see black stories win. And hear me when I say some of them might be. Some of them might have executives that are racist. But more than anything, executives want money. More than anything, executives want the bottom line to be met, right? And that means that if a black show will get the bottom line, will get the business to run, they would run the heck out of that black show. But the truth is that when it comes to choosing between what seems to be a white show, again, white shows have been greenlit for a long time and that has worked for a while, versus a black show that feels more like a risk. For again, think about the advertiser, the trickle down of black shows are more of a risk versus a white show that, oh no, we've done this in the past, let's do it again. What would get greenlit? Of course, the white show would greenlit. That's what we've done. We're just repeating what we've done before. But when it happens that what you've done before is mostly white shows, then of course what you repeat is going to be white shows. That has worked in the past, but you haven't really been that diverse in the past. So of course, let's say out of 5 shows, 1 of them is black, 4 of them are white. Maybe all of them succeed. What looks like to have really worked in the past, it looks like, oh my gosh, there's more white shows that have been successful. Of course, you only lit that 1 black show. Of course, it seems that black shows are not as successful. The truth is that we don't have an equal number of balance. And I think that balance of white shows versus black shows truly comes from executives not taking the initiative to step out of that comfort zone, to see the perspective and truly to have the perspective that a lot of minority and black executives might have, that okay, well, I can have a successful show that is black though, because streaming has changed everything. Okay, so with streaming, there are several things that happen in the industry. There are a lot of things that happen, like literally streaming. Netflix basically changed the TV industry, for better or for worse, some might say. But there are some things that I want to highlight that I think impacted how we see these young black television kind of being made, or I guess the lack thereof, these young black teen shows, and I think would really lend itself and would show you what my theory is. So first, inflated budget and the desire for prestige dramas. The advent of streaming, there also came a sense that TV was moving away from kind of the I don't know, so cable, but TV was moving away from kind of lower budgets, these poorly made shows, sitcoms, yuck. No, we need big budgets, we need prestige, we need actors, we need A-list, movie-only actor, film actors to come and act in these TV shows, because guess what? That's what would get the subscribers. That's what would get people to come and be excited and flock to our TV streaming service instead of going to the movies. This is what would get the folks excited, and it worked. It was true. You know, prestige drama was in. Netflix was making prestige TV show after TV show, dramas after dramas. Many of them were a success. I mean, they got them to where they are right now, so they were a success, right? Streaming became kind of this edgy platform and kind of the new frontier of television, with really pristine and very clean and very, in a way, grown shows. Apart from black TV shows, this is the reason why teen, young adult, comedies, even sitcoms specifically, have taken a downfall, right? These shows are generally smaller budgets, don't have to have all the chasing scenes and, like, you know, the action, the prestige, you know, most of the time is new actors, or, you know, those budgets are not that high, and they oftentimes do what someone might call immature topics, and oftentimes they're even maybe whimsical and lean into, that's why they lean very well into those sitcom types, right? They lean very well into the sitcom genre because of the way they're whimsical, right? They're just silly. They might treat and deal with a hard topic, a difficult topic, but they'll do it in a way that is digestible for teens. And of course, streaming, I'm not saying that they don't do teen shows at all. They do less, but for example, in the teen shows that we see, even with a Euphoria, for example, those teen shows lean very heavily on adult themes. They aren't the teen shows of yesterday that we saw with kind of whimsical plot, two kids, you know, kind of dealing with very simple topics, or even if they do have heavier topics, they're kind of overlaid with comedy and comedic things that happen. No, these are shows that are dealing with teens in high school, of course played by older folks in high school, but they have drugs and sex and some of these subject matters that of course aren't necessarily for the eyes of teens, but they do have teenagers. So someone might say it is a young adult show, but that makes my point exactly. Shows like Euphoria are not really geared towards teens. Teens will end up watching it, but shows like Euphoria are geared towards adults. So again, streaming really impacted how we view TV, or how the industry viewed TV. This led to prestige dramas and kind of a more cleaning up, I would say, of television, what television is. And this means less teen shows. And if we say less teen shows, then black shows, of course, get to the back. If there's less even white teen shows, then there's of course less black teen shows. but also for the shows that we do see that are technically teen focused, they are very adultified. And this goes into my next point, which is mostly a sub point. Adults stand down. Okay, so this next point might be a little bit of a tangent, but follow me here. So again, with streaming changing the way we view TV, that changing, of course, teen sitcoms, teen shows, coming of age shows, and that, of course, also changing some of the ways that teen-centered shows are technically geared towards adults. I think I need adults to stand down. Like, I truly need adults to stand down. And what I mean by that is that if we're asking for more young adult shows, which we are, and I think things are starting to change, but even in the way that things are starting to change, let's put a pin on that. Adults need to not encroach on young adult spaces if they want to participate. And as an adult, even though young adult myself, I am also included in this. I'm 22, but still, I'm a little past maybe what exactly the young adult, the YA audience would be, like the prime of the young adult. I might have dealt with some of those themes. I'm out of high school. I might have dealt with some of those things that they're talking about in these shows, but I need to stand down too. And look, I blame streaming for this. I'm someone who streams, but I blame streaming for a lot of these things, because streaming, I think, made us think that everything is for everyone. So everything is in one place, and so everything that's here I can watch. Back in the day, channels, people had dedicated channels. So this was a kids channel, this was adults channel, this was the little infant channel. So everyone had their own spaces, but with streaming, people don't really have their own spaces. So I think what happens, or my theory here, is that adults start to maybe watch some of these shows that should be actually geared towards young audiences, and with that we get a lot of, this girl's dumb, talking about the main character. Like, what is she complaining about? Like, like, grow up. And I have a great example for this. So the show Forever on Netflix, which is one of the only young adult Black shows that are out right now, really showed this very well, with a lot of people taking to social media, a lot of adults taking to social media and complaining at length at how they felt like Keisha, the main character of the show, was very immature, how they felt like she was making wrong choices, how they felt like she was stupid and dumb, and even calling her out of her name in so many different ways because she didn't make certain decisions. But Keisha is a teenager. Keisha and Justin, the male main lead in the show, are kids. They're making dumb choices because they're kids. Maybe this show isn't for you if you can't enjoy the show, but you have to complain about some of the choices that they're making. I think some of us are still able to enjoy young adult shows and enjoy young adult content. I think that's fine. If you're maybe a little bit behind, a little bit past the target age for a truly young adult show, right? And I mean truly young adult. Even Forever had some. Look, I'm not necessarily, sue me, but I don't know if I necessarily believe that young adult shows, like truly young adult shows, and young adult, like 13 to like 18, right? I don't necessarily think they should include sex. And this also goes for young adult books. And that is, I think, the staple for the publishing industry, at least. Things are kind of changing. But for a truly young adult marketed book, it should not have any explicit sexual content. That's just what I think. Sue me. That's what I think. So even Forever, and I adore Forever. I think it's a great show. I support it wholeheartedly. But that even had some sexual scenes. That's besides the point. But that's also say that for a truly young adult geared show, adults need to realize that they're not the target audience. Like, not everything is for everyone. You can click out. It's okay. Don't encroach on those spaces because we want to keep those spaces alive. We don't want to muddle everything, that then everything becomes everything, and then we don't see a lot of coming of age shows because that's not what the people want. Because streaming services start to think, oh yeah, people are not really enjoying this, when it's mostly adults who are being loud, who are not enjoying these shows. And by the way, streaming has affected things in both ways. So yes, while adults stand down, teens and young adults are also very much watching shows that maybe aren't necessarily geared towards them. There's this thing of like, oh, it's on Netflix, so I mean, click on it, watch it, enjoy it. And yeah, and I think even social media in general is changing how things work. What could be viral on your timeline might very well be what is viral on a 14-year-old's timeline. We all see the same thing on a 12-year-old's time, which is insane to think about. The funny thing that you're seeing, they're also seeing it. And social media, for better or for worse, has created a space in which everyone, of course there's pockets, right? There's pockets, there's sex, there's different communities. But everyone, especially something's viral, something's big, everyone kind of has a similar experience of what social media is. It's this big playground where everyone is essentially playing and having fun and doing different things, but everyone's there. So a kid can also have access very much to what an adult has access to, which, yeah. I'm not saying that back in the day, because kids had channels, they couldn't also have access. Of course, they could change the channel and now have access to a grown person's channel, right? But what I am saying is that it just felt like we had more of a dedicated space for us. So even if we did maybe want to be grown and change channel, and sometimes we did that, the space that was ours was ours. That was our space. It felt sacred because it was our space. It felt, I don't know, good. I wanted to be in that space, to be on that channel, because it was my space, right? It was mine. So we took ownership of that space, and that space was geared towards us. So that channel would really kind of dive into the interest of kids. And even the way the advertisers work, they really geared towards kids and their interests. So it felt like we were catered to, and it was that mutual relationship. And I have a larger conversation that I hope to dive into at some point of age. I don't want to say ageism, but maybe ageism, but how Gen Z, millennials, especially women, are dealing with age, and how we see that age is just becoming such an interesting point of conversation. I think recently someone said, a millennial said, that millennials haven't had enough, they haven't had to be adults really, like for real yet, because they haven't had access to some of the things that their parents had access to at their age. Like millennials who are 30, 31 don't own a home yet. So they don't really feel very much like adults because they don't own a home. And in an interesting way, I think that for a lot of Gen Zers, there's also an interesting thing happening in which social media has kind of accelerated the age that people act, I want to say, which might be a little controversial, people act, but also the age of milestones, right? And we can dive into that a little later. But for now, this conversation, I think the idea of streaming, to recap, I am essentially saying that streaming has changed what good TV is, what good television is, and good television has been packaged into this category of prestigious, of big budget, and that has kind of pushed teen shows out, teen sitcoms out. And of course, if teen sitcoms in general, teen shows are pushed out, Black teen shows, of course, at the bottom of the barrel. And we've also seen that when we do see some teen shows, they are very much geared also towards adults. And this kind of creates the cycle of adults encroaching on these spaces, and these spaces not getting as much leverage in a way. And then we also see teens, of course, because there's no spaces made only for them, they tend to kind of veer off and explore the World Wide Web. I do want to say that I do believe that things are starting to take a turn. And of course, change always happens, right? There's people out there who are doing and fighting the good fight to make sure that we see more Black television. There are people out there who are fighting to make sure that we see more representation on screen in general. So change is coming. So I want to shout out A Different World, the kind of sequel reboot that's coming from Netflix. That really, I'm really interested to see what that, I guess, format is going to look like, because A Different World was essentially a sitcom in the 90s, 80s. That again featured young adult Black life at HBCU. So I'm very intrigued to see what that format is going to look like on Netflix. I doubt that it will be a sitcom formula, but I'm intrigued. I believe it's still going to be comedy leaning. So I'm excited for when it comes out in September, and just to get to watch it and see what comes next in terms of Black TV geared towards young audiences, because I believe that Netflix taking a step with Forever and even with now A Different World, we're going to see more players start to pay attention, I believe, and just perhaps more change, because again, these players care about the bottom line. So if we see more Black casted shows that are doing very well, like Forever did very well, I believe we're going to start to see some differences as well. So anyways, I've said all these things, right? I've talked about a little bit of history. I've talked about the state of the industry now, kind of bounced around different places. And the question is, well, this is kind of depressing, I guess. I mean, at least it's out of our hands. This is kind of a lot. So what can we do? That's great that you ask, because I have a few things, just a few things that I believe can really serve, or could really serve, to help us at least have some agency. First, watch purposefully. What I mean by this is, there was a lot of talk recently on TikTok, again, about a show that came out and people were kind of mad about it because there were no Black people, no people of color. And people were kind of bringing about this idea of hate watching the show. And I get the sense of hate watching, like I get it. I personally don't do it because I don't really see a point in hate watching. You're still giving them views. You can't really hate watch something that you don't like. So you do kind of like the show, you're just watching it. But yes, so the whole point of hate watching, I guess, was to despise something but still be in the loop. I suppose that's the point. And while I understand FOMO and wanting to be kind of up on what's new, I think we have to watch purposefully to the point of, nah, I don't care that that thing is trending because it doesn't have a Black main cat, it doesn't have a Black main character, doesn't have any Black side character. I'm not even going to spend my time. Again, views are money. I'm not going to spend my eyes on this. I'm not going to spend my subscriber money, my monthly subscriber money, putting that in and then getting the watch hours for that show up. I'm not going to participate. I think that's very important. And that goes into my second point. Curate what you watch. I think for long, a lot of people are, especially now with social media, we are watching what's popular. We are watching, oh, someone on TikTok talked about this. They say it's really good. People were liking it. We're going to watch it. But we have to curate what we watch to the point where there's a show that we're the only person talking about the show. We're the only person putting everyone on this show. But it's good. It has the cast that we feel represented by. It has people working on it who care about the project. And we can be the people to share it. Like, not everyone, you don't have to be watching something simply because everyone else is watching it and you want to be a part of the loop. I think we need to really disconnect ourselves from wanting to watch something just because the masses are watching it. To this day, I am mad that I never knew about Swagger when it was out. I think it came out maybe in 2023. I didn't know about Swagger. And Swagger is this coming of age Black show you should go watch on Apple TV. It was canceled after the second season, I believe. I'm still gonna watch it. Still mad that I wasn't in the know about Swagger, and simply because I probably didn't see anyone talking about it. I didn't do my due diligence to go out and seek a show to watch. I didn't curate what I was watching. So, and through Swagger, in Googling the show and kind of researching, I found another show called The Crossover on Disney Plus that I think it only has one season. Came out, I think, 2023. And I never heard of the show. Again, it's a similar kind of basketball show, dealing again with a young main Black character, and kind of slew of Black people are very much black cast. Never heard of the show, never found out of the show until I decided to do my due diligence, do my research, curate what I watch. I would have been in the know. Maybe I would have been a part of a bunch of other people watching it. Maybe I would have put other people on, and maybe the show would have gotten renewed for a second season if more of us were watching and sharing and spreading the word. There are a good amount of people that I not know personally, but I see online who are always voicing their opinions about, oh, we need more shows like this. People who are making the fan cast, people who are posting pictures and propping up the young black actors, people who are keeping up with what the young black actors are doing and kind of supporting them. We need to, again, if you're not posting, at least like and retweet these things, and it's in comment. And it's very important because it's in those, you see so much how social media is impacting TV in real time. I think gone are the days when it's like, oh, social media doesn't really impact media at all, but it really does. So yes, keeping up our voices online. For the people who are already, shout out to you. For the people who are liking, commenting, shout out to you. Let's keep that up. I think even though you might say, even if you're someone who creates online, who always props up black voices and black young actors, you might kind of say, no one's listening. People are listening, people are saying your voice matters and you are really impacting change. It's just about continuing to do that work. Unfortunately, change is slow, so yeah. Those are some things we should do. And again, that's a non-exhaustive list. There's more things we can do, but that's just a few things. And for the industry, if there's any industry folks, I do have some things that you could do as well. Do some more smaller budget things. As I'm recording this, Hollywood is being just surprised, apparently, with 2 movies that have done very, very well in the box office. Backrooms and Obsession, both kind of horror thrillers, and there's kind of this, oh, wow, they're doing so well, this surprise that these movies are doing so well at the box office, and especially because both of the movies come essentially from YouTube creators, folks, both of them, I think directors were 2 YouTubers, people who had created on YouTube previously, but also this kind of, they're all both so low budget, beneath maybe $1 million, and they've made so much money. And every time conversations like these happen and Hollywood is somehow shocked that, oh wow, so small budgets can yield big results and we can see big revenue from these things. I'm always confused. I'm always truly confused. I remember when Get Out first came out, like the movie Get Out by Jordan Peele, and it was the same sort of shock, like, wow, look at this small budget. And I'm always surprised that that is the case. Again, streaming has really changed things and moved things into the prestige, right, arena. Like, we need big budget, we need to spend all this money because we're gonna get it back. And that's essentially also the Wall Street mindset. Like, with great risks come great rewards, and we have to like go all in because then we're gonna get the most. And I think in part it's greed. Let's just be honest here. To say that, hey, let's spend less money. And so we lose less if we don't make our money as much. But also, if we do make money back, when we do make money back, now we make it, like the money is like now it's like, wow, we didn't spend that much, but look how much we made back. But Hollywood, for whatever reason, I'm saying it's greed, or maybe it's just a nearsightedness, they, for the life of them, cannot get fully behind having a more robust low budget. And low budget doesn't necessarily mean poorly made. We've seen from, again, Backrooms and Obsession more recently, but again, we have a whole list of entire low budget movies that have come out, and there's whole production companies that are essentially founded on having low budgets. But for TV, especially moving towards the streaming side of things, I think we need to see that coming back a little bit more. We are in some ways maybe going to see some of that with some vertical dramas, and I think more production companies and maybe more streamers and networks buying into vertical dramas. But I will say that I do think that we need sitcoms to come back, basically. That's what I'm saying. We need sitcoms to make a comeback. People are not just watching Netflix because they want to see the next action movie starring whatever A-list actor with also whatever A-list actor. No, people are watching good television. If there's good TV to be watched, whether it's lower budget or bigger budget, people are watching it. And you know how we know this? Because the numbers for YouTube, which by the way, YouTube, not technically a traditional streaming service, is the most watched streaming service. Like, it is the most watched streaming service, while not necessarily in the same league as one would say in Netflix, because they don't do the same content. When compared with Netflix, watch hours for YouTube are higher. So people are watching creators create videos and their content. Look, Netflix, everyone's happy. They're watching creators, and creators are not necessarily using these cameras that are crazy. These cameras, they're not having all of these things. And I'm not saying that good art doesn't need to be made. I'm just saying that maybe we can also have smaller budgets, and with those smaller budgets, we can now take more risks. We can now take more risks, which to me, making a Black show shouldn't be a risk, and we see how it shouldn't be a risk. But again, because of the reasons I've said, that is still viewed as a risk. Making Black TV is still viewed as a risk. That's my theory, and I'm sticking beside it. So we can take more of these risks. We can hire some of these directors who have never maybe directed something. We can have more of these writers who are new and not as experienced, but they have a lot of drive and are really championing diversity. Because with smaller budget, we're risking less. So that's my little spiel to Hollywood. Yeah, this is the end of my conversation. It's almost 2 a.m. Actually, it is 2 a.m. here. And I technically have work tomorrow, but I do work from home tomorrow, Friday. Yay. So we'll have to just roll out of bed. No, let me joke. Let me stop. But so these are my theories, and I hope we can have a conversation more than anything in the comment section, whether you disagree, whether you agree, whether you find some of my theories dumb, or whether you're like, I don't fully see that. I want you to comment. Let's engage. Let's expand on some of my theories. Let's bring new theories to light. And more than anything, I really hope that if this conversation does nothing else, it at least gets you to watch some of those old Black TV shows. Kenan and Kel, go check it out. No, but seriously, I do hope that we see, and I do think that we are starting to see at least one that's coming, A Different World. So watch A Different World in September on Netflix. But I do hope that we're inspired to just keep fighting the good fight, and that we'll see more teen Black shows. And yeah, thank you for listening. Thank you for liking, subscribing, or all the things. I appreciate you. Until next time.